Hey guys, welcome back. Doing a review of my fellow Strikebreader brothers. They've done and myself as well. We've done a affiliation tier list. So we're going to go into it for you, and that way you can get a grasp on where your favorite team of superheroes sits. And I've got a very good friend of mine, Mr. Ryan Farmer, joining me. How you going, man?
Love getting an invite to join the stream. Appreciate you having me on.
Anytime, mate. Like, you are 10 times the content creator than I am, so I love bringing in a professional.
Professional is a strong word. Let's not get carried away.
An amateur.
Mature.
Alrighty, so I've got my screen shared to you. So basically, we've just we went through and we each individually ranked what we think are the best affiliation, and then you can see on the right hand column we've got top, mid, and lower. So you can be the fifth or the sixth ranked affiliation, but we still think it's top tier. Like, there's still huge chance of this winning a tournament, right? And then mid tier can still win a tournament, but needs to be played at a higher level. And then if you're in that lower red area, you absolutely can still win a tournament with these guys, but you probably have to play mistake free. Is how I would describe it.
Really important to make that distinction, because X-Men, as we'll see in a second, are in a lower tier, but they've made cut in the TTS league the past 2 seasons. Like, the gaps between all of these affiliations are a lot smaller than you'd expect.
Yeah.
This is kind of a rough summation, but don't think that because of the the crossover with characters and everything, there is no reason that you can't take any of these affiliations and win an event with them.
I 100% agree, because I have lost games to X-Force. I've lost games to everyone in that bottom red list in recent weeks. This is not just ages ago. This is like recent times. I have lost games using one of the top tier affiliations against one of those ones that we've labeled as lower, and not just lost, I mean been smashed. So there absolutely is a very small gap between these, which is what's so good about this game. But where do you want to start? You want to start from the bottom or work our way up from the top?
I want to start from the bottom and get into let's start in the red zone, baby, and move our way up.
All right, so we're starting off with X-Force. So basically, Morgs, Travis, and I all labelled it as number 17, which is sadly last place, and you've labelled it as 16, so it's only just slightly better. With an average of being, you can see the averages on the screen there, guys, but 16 points. So it's basically got an average of being 17th pick out of the 4 of us as being a affiliation. And I think that for me comes down to how weak their leadership is compared to others.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I have them above Guardians is only because I actually, believe it or not, when you crunch some math, their leadership's not great. But realistically, whenever you roll attack dice, if you're doing 2 attacks a turn, you only need that reroll once in the 2 attacks. Like, It's not as big of a deal as people think. Like, people say, hey, I wish it was every time I attack. Like, yeah, that's fine. The free reroll isn't horrible. I think the problem is it's not great with a 5-point leader, because you're not getting as many attacks in a turn.
Yep, 100%. Plus, I also think there's like a bit of... I don't know, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but X-Force was released at the exact same time that they spoiled Inhumans, and Inhumans all came with an innate ability to reroll attack and defense dice every single time they roll dice, right? And then the X-Force leadership was just a once per turn, and I feel like people are just really annoyed about that, and I personally was as well, because it just didn't make sense to me that they deemed these characters to have rerolls. And then this other X-Force, where their entire thing is a reroll and they're limited to it, right?
That's a really good point there. They don't have the deepest, best grouping of affiliated characters either. Yeah. Deadpool is okay. Domino is amazing, but when you look at X-Force creating that core roster, I still think that they're in that bit of a Spider-Foes hole where they're waiting for the rest of the faction to arrive.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Once the rest of the faction arrives, it'll be crazy.
Especially because you get Wolverine and Sabretooth, who are in and of themselves lower tier characters, which is it's hard. That being said, not to spend too much time on X-Force, but I do think there's unexplored territory here. I know everybody says Wolverine isn't great, but one of the big downsides of Wolverine is he doesn't get a reroll. Like, he has no way to mod his dice. You put him in X-Force, then suddenly that's 9 points for him in Cable, but you have a ranged beater and then an up close and personal guy. Fill it with some, if they could, if Bob was even affiliated or something, I think there is play to be had there, but regardless, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, 100%. And that is just real quick, I'll just touch on it, something that Travis and I have been talking about. There isn't very many ways to give out rerolls to the rest of your team. Yeah. Like, there just isn't. There's Shuri and Zemo, and I think that's it. So there's something to be said about these style of leaderships. They are very good and open for abuse. So next up, Guardians. So Guardians, I personally despise their leadership. The only reason I ranked them above X-Force is their access to Angela and Lovable Misfits. That was the only reason they got pipped above X-Force for me personally.
Yeah, incredible card. I said when we did the podcast, I always keep the full Guardians roster in my kit because I actually think they're the most fun faction to play in casual, and you bring a lot of weird tactics cards like that you don't usually play, and if they come into play, great, and if not, you get rerolls. I usually play Guardians against newer players just because I have an awesome time with them. But if this is a competitive tier list, it is a detriment in having to dip into your tactics card pool.
Absolutely. We have seen some characters getting released which could be good for Guardians. Like, I just did a video on Clea. She's like a mini Red Skull, and characters like Star-Lord are actually really great pieces for like artillery platforms. They just lack delivery mechanisms, right? And you could slot Clea in there and potentially give him a platform to get into position and start raining down those, fully auto bombs. So that would be kind of cool to see.
No doubt, dude.
Yeah.
What we got next?
We got Inhumans. So Inhumans, for me, I ranked them as 15, Morgs and Travis 14, and you 15. So we're on the same page here, which brought them in as sadly third last, with an average of 14. So I think that this is purely on the fact that their affiliated characters are just not that great, minus Medusa. Lockjaw is like this, is like the best delivery platform in the game, but that's basically what he does, nothing else. Crystal is a same thing, a delivery platform in A-Force. And then Black Bolt is just really, I personally just think he's not that great for a 5-threat.
I think the problem is, I actually think Crystal's underrated. I think Crystal is an excellent 3-cost character. I think Lockjaw is really great, and Medusa's obviously S tier as a character. I think Inhumans suffers from the same problem that X-Force and Defenders suffer, in that they have a really expensive leader who doesn't quite, in my opinion, isn't quite worth the premium 5 points you're taking to bring the affiliation. Also, same issue with Asgard as well. Yep. You have this really expensive leader, despite having incredible in-affiliated characters and a great leadership. I just don't think Black Bolt brings enough to the table. That being said, we've seen some Inhumans players really begin to crack the code with Quicksilver and a few other splash-ins. So I would not be surprised if, with a few more seasons or experience, or maybe a couple more characters, such as Miss Marvel coming out next month or 2 months from now, that Inhumans gets a bump up on this list.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There is a few things coming for them that they're absolutely going to go up, because their leadership is actually like really, really, really strong.
It's so good. It's super strong.
Next up, we got X-Men. X-Men, for me, I've ranked at 14. Morgan's actually ranked them a lot higher than everyone else at 10, which is mid, like almost in. He actually has ranked them an entire like section above, right, at mid. The rest of us have got him at 14, 15. I find with X-Men, Storm is unbelievable, right? Everything is great on her character. I would have loved to have seen one of her superpowers be one power less, so you have more chance of getting it every turn. But aside from that, like them and themselves are great. I just feel like their filler pieces are not that great, and that's why I've ranked them so low.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. I think X-Men are just like are just a half a faction, in that I believe they're still waiting for the rest of their wave. Like, we're waiting for Gambit and Jubilee and Nightcrawler and the tons of other options. Professor Xavier, right? Yeah. I would not be surprised if there are a slew of X-Men Tactics cards and characters on the way that will immediately change how the faction is played, but even like make Cyclops, like transform him into maybe an S-tier leader. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I would not be surprised if they have a huge long-term game plan for X-Men because there's so many characters.
Absolutely. And like Cyclops' leadership when they first came out was actually the leadership I looked at and went, oh boy, like I can't think of any characters that can abuse this, but at some point there's going to be a character that has an attack that is just so bonkers that if you can just do it every turn, you are just going to wipe people off the board. And that's where it's going to fit in perfectly, right?
I mean, think about like, look at Dr. Voodoo's spender. Now, Voodoo isn't an X-Men, right? But his spender's really, really solid. If you start seeing stuff like that in an X-Men roster, where you can have Cyclops like reduce it down so it's only 1 power or 2 power, and it's just like this incredible spender. We're already kind of seeing that with Jean Grey. I played against someone who was doing a Cyclops Jean Grey mix with the Jean card, and he was using Cyclops' leadership every game, using another character as a battery, and she was getting her spender off every turn and just shredding me to bits. And then when I went after her, Cyclops got that free attack.
That's actually pretty scary. I was just instantly thinking of like can Cyclops' leadership reduce it to 0? Like they don't have to pay any power for it. Someone else pays the power for it.
I don't think that it is a reduction to 0, but let me check right quick.
Too easy. I was just thinking of like Cassandra Nova, with her 1 power spender that advances in their speed. She can just throw it out by using everyone else's power. Would be kind of spicy as well.
So Cyclops' leadership is a minimum of 1.
Okay, so you can't. They've thought of it. They've thought of the abuse, and that's why he's been ranked down a bit.
Right, but I mean, reducing Jean Grey's spender, it's normally that what is it called? The telekinetic force is usually 6 power, and so he had other power generators and was making it a 3 cost every turn.
That's insane. I find her spender and Scarlet Witch's spender is pay 6 power, delete that character.
Yeah, it's a range 3 9-dice shot with explosive and stuff. Like, if you're able to get that off every turn, it's just monstrous.
It's crazy.
There's tech in X-Men that has not yet been explored for multitudes of reasons, but I think, people need to look outside the box for them. And if they get some more characters and maybe a few more tactics cards that work, I could see them being very competitive. But as it stands right now, low tier.
Yeah, low tier. I agree. Morgan disagree, but the rest of us agree. Next up, we got Spider-Foes. I was shocked at how low I actually ranked these guys. Now, they are mid-tier. Spider-Foes are legit. They got this massive taxing Green Goblin, and I think a lot of the competitive Spider-Foe lists that are coming out just don't bring him at all. They just bring, because their tactics cards, like Sinister Traps and stuff, are unbelievable. So
Sinister Traps is the card. That card really makes the affiliation tick. And I think the reason I have them so low is if you can be effective with Carnage and maybe some of these other characters without Sinister Traps, you can just splash them in Dark Dimension or somewhere else.
Yep.
But we give Green Goblin a lot of hate, which I totally understand. There still is a Spider-Foe roster that is totally centered around moving people around, slowing the game down, slowly whittling them down, that consists of Green Goblin, Mysterio, Kraven, and then a beater like Carnage. And I think that you really shouldn't count them out just because Goblin is slightly below the curve, which is why, they're mid.
I actually woke up this morning, and I'm not even joking, with this like urge to play Spider-Foes with Green Goblin and Mordo. Because Goblins always struggle with power, right? That's literally his only problem. He can't get power on his healthy side. And I thought, why not bring in Mordo? Like, just bring him in, extra dice, GG, right? Just this weird hankering to play it. So next up, we got Defenders. They have come in ranked at number 12, I want to say. We actually all ranked them the same, and you ranked them 1 lower. But basically the same. So I feel like Defenders, like their leadership is good and it can be extremely savage, But their like big trick they got going, if you're going to play defenders, is basically the pentagrams trick, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a very good trick, but it's like a one trick pony right now, or one trick horse, or however you say it. And I think that's why I've ranked them down there, because I just felt like everyone above them can do something similar to that, if not as good, and other stuff, right? So I just, yeah.
And listen, Heroes for Hire with Luke Cage and Iron Fist is so good. But any other than pentagrams, they just don't have a slew of really good tactics cards. And unfortunately, Strange is a 5-threat leader, or 6 if you're taking the Soul Gem. Just, I don't believe is providing enough for you in terms of flexibility to be better than some of the other affiliations we're going to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. So next up, we are sitting at Cabal. So we broke Morgan's sparring partner, Wreath. We broke his heart by ranking Cabal down here. Let me just check what number we're at. 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10. No, we're at 11. So number 11 for Cabal. That feels pretty much bang on. You and I'm 11, you're 10, Morgs is 11, and Travis actually rated them at 8. And I think that's off the back of probably the addition of a dual leader, right? Having the ability to bring in a full Sin roster and a full Red Skull roster and be able to pivot between the two, where you've got this attrition style squad and this extract, shenanigan focused squad where you can deny extracts for your opponents it's very brutal. It's not as brutal as some of the tricks in the top tier character like lists above us, but it's still really, really, really strong.
I mean, I think we've seen a real resurgence of Crossbones, at least, with Sin helping him out. And if you've never played a game against the Sin leadership, buckle your seatbelt, because it is so frustrating to play against.
That's me.
Yeah, it is. I don't think you quite realize what you're in for until it's happened. Yep. And it's really cool and thematic. And of course, they've got affiliated MODOK. They're really good. They're really good.
Really solid.
They've just fallen off a bit because they were a core set affiliation. So people want to try the new shiny stuff. But in terms of just meat and potatoes, like strong out of the box, not maybe the highest ceiling, but definitely not the lowest floor, you can't go wrong with Cabal.
Yeah, 100%. And I also, I actually copped, speaking of Crossbones, I actually copped a bit of heat on my recent tier list where I ranked Crossbones above Beast, believe it or not.
I think it's super fair. Crossbones is amazing.
Absolutely.
Sin. He's so good.
He's got heaps of stuff going for him, but sadly, this is not a character review. Otherwise, I could actually talk about Crossbones for at least another 5 minutes, but we'll hook into it. So next up, we got Brotherhood. So me and Travis have both rated them at number 10, and yourself and Morgs have rated them at number 7, but still mid. So we're still not saying they're top tier. They're still a mid tier list area, which they can still means, guys. Don't forget, Brotherhood absolutely can win tournaments. They have heaps of tricks available to them. We just think there's better tricks in other squads. 6-threat leader is a negative, even though they have a delivery platform for him and all these other things going. But they do have a 3-threat leader, but I feel like if Mystique had a slightly stronger leadership, these guys would be top tier straight away.
I think that Magneto, as Morgan said on the podcast, is easy to play poorly. But their ceiling is undoubtedly very, very high if you understand how to use them. And I've seen even Mystique's leadership getting more play and being very exciting. And I also think this is an affiliation that if they can get a couple more characters in, I know they've got Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, but even if they can get their flame guy, I can't remember his name, or Blob, or a couple other pieces, they could be even more scary.
Absolutely. Mystique's leadership for me, I've never played it. I've played against it a few times, and nearly every time I've versed it, it has either won the game for my opponent or almost lost me the game because I've completely forgotten about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you don't really realize what's happening. The turn one after setup, when they run up and go, okay, I'm going to do this and this, and it's not going to cost power. I'm like, I I did not account for that turn 1 play.
No, not even. And the reason I've lost games to it is things like, you know, they've only got a couple of characters left, or I've dazed some of their characters, and it's like you need to capture 2 points at once, and one character can do both in Mystique leadership, right? And it's really can catch you off guard, you know, out of nowhere. So next up, we are still in mid-tier. We've got Asgard. So I've rated them at number 9, which is what we are. Cabal was 11, Brotherhood 10, Asgard number 9. So still sitting, it looks like I was bang on, by the way. Number 9 for me, number 7 for Travis, number 8 for you and Morgs, which, you know, we basically all have the same consensus that they're essentially middle of the pack right now. And I think that that's solely off the back of their Thor having to be leader.
I 100% agree. We're one of the same mind in that Thor is a character that I want to really, really love, but he just frustrates the heck out of me. If his dice are, if you just have a below average dice game with Thor, it's wasted 5, you know?
Yeah, it's horrible.
You need him to do well. And unfortunately, Angela just does the kinds of things you want to do better. But she's also, you know, they've got potentially the best affiliated characters in the whole game.
Absolutely. And some of the best, like, cards. Like, some of their cards they have available to them are unbelievable.
Yeah, Odin's Blessing and Rainbow Bridge, it's all just mind-blowingly good. I really want them, you know, when Love and Thunder gets closer, if we can get, like, a Jane Foster leader for Asgard, maybe she can be a 4 threat or something. I think that would really rejuvenate them. But I worry about that because their characters are just already so good.
Yeah, they are like one leader away from being like number 1. That's how close they are. And you know, we are seeing some re-releases coming out now, you know, with Iron Man coming out in the Hulkbuster. So it'd be kind of cool to see Thor maybe re-released. What's the name of his axe that he gets? I always forget. Mjolnir's the hammer,
Stormbringer? I think it's Stormbringer,
I think that's it.
right?
Yeah, love to see Thor, you know, using that, you know, kind of thing would be really cool to see. So they definitely have some re-release options available for him, so they also could go down that path.
For sure.
Now, next up, we have a hotly contested Dark Dimension that are coming in at number... What are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... Number 8. And this has got some massive swing. None of us agree on this at all. So you have ranked Dark Dimension as number 9. Morgan has ranked them as number 15, the 3rd worst affiliation in the game, he's saying. Travis has rated them as number 5. I have rated them as number 1.
Oof.
What does that say to you about Dark Dimension?
Listen, I think Dark Dimension has the potential to be extraordinary. I think there are already players that are tinkering with how to abuse the extra power they're gaining, how to make this a full attrition beat down or have incredible turn 1 plays, basically making tier list squads. I think what it comes down to, though, and maybe where Morgan's line of thinking is that that's an 8 threat leader, and that's more than Magneto. And we know how easy it is to play Magneto poorly. Yeah. You're going to have to be prepared to go against Dark Dimension, but you're going to have to be also prepared to have a pretty significant variety of talents of players that are going to be using them. And I don't know. I think the smart call is to have every roster have Dormammu in there, just so people have to be aware.
Just in case. Yeah. I mean, you can easily fit one tactic card and Dormammu in every roster, right? Yeah. So let me just pose you a couple of questions, just so I can justify me saying they're number 1. All right. So let me just pose you a question. We're not talking about Dark Dimension. We're just talking about how would you like a card in this game that just said, listen, you ignore your leadership, but you gain an extra power return.
Yeah, real good, right?
That's strong, baby. That is very strong. And there is a lot of leaderships here where you would just go, yep, I'll pay that. I'll pay that in a heartbeat. The other reason I've ranked them as number 1 is because I think that this is a affiliation that could probably invest a tactic card slot in playing the Citizen's Extract.
I said that on the podcast, and I super agree.
Yeah, because Dormammu has just got unbelievable like shenanigans there. He can just be fed. If you build a roster around bringing in a characters that get 2 power turn already, that means from the second turn onwards, you can just be feeding this insane amount of power into your Dormammu and just dumping these citizens just into extract. So I think that has got some huge amounts of plays to it. The downside to it is that it's completely random, right? You can discard it.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the simple fact that he is extremely good, albeit there is a small like resurgence in these activated tick attacks in, you know, Doctor Strange and Iron Fist. So that is, I have played against Dormammu and just ticked him at the start of a turn, and that has been a super feels bad for my opponent. But I definitely think that for me personally, I've ranked him as number 1, and Travis has ranked him as number 5 because I think he just thinks the other ones are more powerful, but he still thinks they're top tier. They are just rife for abuse. And I think that the 8th threat is the only way they could balance it.
One of the reasons I have Iron Fist in my squad is so that 1 out of the 8 turns a game, I don't have to worry about him, or 1 out of the 6 if we get that far.
Oh, but the thing is that 1 turn is on turn 3 or 2, depending how your game goes, right? So it's very, very strong, right? But that's enough about them, like Dark Dimension. I just thought I was looking at the all of our scores across the board, and I just thought, wow, like this is what this tells me is that none of us know anything about the Dark Dimension, and we don't know.
And I'm excited to see how it pans out.
Yeah, I honestly think there'll be one in the cut for sure.
You know, real quick before we move on here, I think the success of Dark Dimension is very, very, very much dependent on what tactics cards are banned or restricted next. I'll say that.
Yeah, 100%.
If they have access to all you've got, and that's still not banned or whatever, there's some dangerous plays that can happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was recently on the receiving end of a Dark Dimension, all you've got Doom Prophecy Zemo, who then, after I killed him, was just instantly brought back to life.
Yep.
That is really crazy. So depending how that goes with the new ban restricted list coming out, whenever that is, 6 months from now, 1 month from now, who knows?
Yeah.
Really keen to see what they do with that. So next up we have Avengers. So I think a lot of people like would rank Avengers like in low tier. But I actually think that with the inclusion of Mordo for your Captain Rogers style Avengers, I still think that's low tier, but now with the inclusion of Sam and the Sam spam, like that is almost top tier. I like Morgan's rated as top tier. I've been on the receiving end of it, and it can be a little bit swingy for dice, but it is on the cusp of top tier. So
given the recent news, are you ready for my new favorite Avenger? I'm ready for Clea. I'm ready for Clea to be an Avengers, dude.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I don't think there's a better fit than Clea, given her reposition. She's just an enabler. And everyone's like, oh, her health is so low. Whatever. You just keep her next to Steve Rogers. You're fine, man.
Yep.
Like, her and Rogers will be able to just, you know, I know people say Steve Rogers might, like, say what you will about him, but the control that Clea brings to the game gives them a good mystic attacker too, and suddenly all her stuff is way cheaper. Her repositions, man, I'm in, honestly.
Yeah, she's good to go. I literally just filmed a video on this before I texted you for Clea, and one of the things I was speaking about is that Clea, I think her 5 health and 2 physical defense is how they've balanced her, because her superpowers is Red Skull with a automatic control piece a turn in a really, really good throw.
So good.
Yeah, or you can just pay an action and guaranteed get your spender off every turn. Like, it is very, very good.
No doubt. So, and then, you know, we know how good Sam Wilson has been for Avengers, War Machine. Whether it's Sam spam or even just 5 wide with Sam's leadership, we're finding is very, very competitive and good.
Yeah, his leadership is... my initial read on it was like, oh, that's kind of good. But now that I've seen it against it and played with it and seen really good players play with it, it is actually really difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
It's a very, very, very strong leadership. And I think the simple fact that, you know, some of the other Avengers characters aren't as good as some of these other characters in the squads above here is the only reason that not all 4 of us labeled them as top tier.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a mid just because I figured the top 5 would only be top tier for me. So
that's all good. I think I did 60. I did 6 top tier. No, I did 7 top tier because I labeled Dark Dimension top tier. So my top 7 affiliations, I was like, these are all like, I can see these winning a tournament tomorrow, like no problems. So next up, we are starting to hit our top tier average, like our average top tier characters. Does that make sense? So lists, affiliations. So first up, we have A-Force. So you are ranked them at 5, Morgan at 9, me and Travis both at 6. So they've come in an average of 6. And we've all labelled them as top except for Morgs. I'd love to hear his reasoning behind them not being top, but
he said on the cast he said it's simply because of All You've Got plays in the She-Hulk keeping her down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he said if All You've Got is gone, then She-Hulk stocks are super up, which I'm inclined to agree. But that being said, even with All You've Got being super prevalent, I still think A-Force has massive game, even with potentially leaderless She-Hulk too, on the back of how strong all their tactics cards are.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've seen 15 threat squads for A-Force that don't have She-Hulk in them that are like Wakanda Wave level good, right? Like really, really powerful at that low threat. So that's why I've rated them as top tier. I do agree with Morgs about that. All You've Got really hurts your Hulks and your She-Hulks. It really, really hurts them. And their ability to be put on the table because they can just get one-rounded by a few of these other characters floating around. So I do agree with that. A-Force, that's pretty much bang on. I agree with where that's sitting. Next up, we've got your fan favorite, Web Warriors. Do you want to go through them?
Yeah, baby. So I've got them number 4th top tier, Morgan number 3 top, Travis 11, really far down, mid-tier, and Jaren.
Was that bang in the background, you throwing something into the wall about that?
No, I think
How dare you?
I think it was my girlfriend sick of me talking about Web Warriors.
Throwing something at you.
Yeah, right. Then you've got 7th top tier.
Yeah.
And I mentioned on when we talked about them that I think Web Warriors have one of the highest ceilings of any of the affiliations, but one of the like absolute bottom of the barrel floors.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Their power generation is so bad because they don't take as much to have a penchant for not taking a ton of damage that they are vulnerable. And I know some people play like Miles and people plus Corvus and Proxima, and that's totally a valid way to play. But I always feel like that's
not Web Warriors.
It doesn't always feel.
That's Corvus Proxima.
I don't want to throw shade at anybody who wants to play Web Warriors that way at all. But Corvus Proxima is going to make anybody really, really good. You put them in any one of these affiliations.
Put them in X-Force.
Yeah, I put them in X-Force. Anything. But given I said that one of the reasons I have them so high, and I think I would have actually maybe bumped them to mid with this Mystic Wave coming, had it not been for Moon Knight being added. Because now you can go 6 wide Web Warriors at 17. So you can do Miles, Black Cat, Moon Knight, Gwen, and then add Splash, Lizard, and Okoye at 17. And you have 3 characters with stealth. And I think that's an absurdly good roster.
Yeah, that I've never even thought about that. And you've said it now at 17, 6 wide Web Warriors. And those characters in particular, that's actually absurdly good. It's actually
so good.
That's really powerful. That's a really, really powerful squad. I only ranked them at 7th because I need to see Amazing Spider-Man in the wild. Because his leadership is crazy good. His quips are crazy good. He does all these crazy things. But because of the weird release schedule we've had and our previous restrictions in being what's allowed to play in the league, I don't know where he sits. And I think they could very easily sit at that 4 and number 3 slot like you and Morgs have. Even with the Mystic release coming, because as long as like you can do an entire tournament and not hit that Mystic squad, you know what I mean? Like they're out there, but they're only one of the top 6.
And Peter still gets his rerolls against Mystic defense too with his Mastered Spider Sense. Like he's not as vulnerable as you'd think to that specifically. So I really think that Web Warriors can perform as good as any affiliation in the game, if not better. But man, if you haven't had reps with them, you're going to get shredded because they're tough to play right. That's
the caveat on Web Warriors, isn't it? Like you have to put reps into them. I actually disagree with you about the Mystic thing while you were talking. I was thinking about it. I actually think they're probably going to be one of the better affiliations to hit these Midnight Suns and Convocation, Mystics, spam squads, because Miles' leadership just gives you a reroll on defense dice, right?
Yeah,
so
it's true.
Every other affiliation we're looking at right now has nothing like that. So you're actually probably going to be one of the better squads to go against them, although you do have lower health pools. But to top it off, you can reroll skulls in defense, and Dark Dimension exists, and I've ranked them as number 1. So that's another big plus, right? Any ability to reroll skulls right now with Dormammu floating around, massive.
Yeah, agreed.
So next up, we've got our number 4, which was actually rated at number 4 by all of us but you. So Midnight Suns. Now, I'm just going to take a stab in the dark here, and I'm going to say that you've ranked them at 11th because of Blade's complete lack of delivery.
So I would be lying if I said that was a part of it. I have them 11th because I need to see more reps with them. This is me not having enough yet. I feel like all you guys have gotten them on the table and are drinking the Kool-Aid, which is totally good. And I'm just gonna cop out here. When I made my rankings, I had not yet seen their Wakanda Forever tactics card. I hadn't realized that had been spoiled.
Yeah,
so
it's brutal.
If I were to do it again, I feel like I'd shuffle them higher, but I do think that they have the potential to be super, super good, and they've got really good affiliated characters. I love Voodoo. I love Blade. I'm just curious on what the final kind of roster configuration looks like, and most importantly, what crises they're actually good at, because they feel like a very balanced, approach. I don't think they're full attrition. I don't think they're full control. I'm really, really interested to see what the crisis selection is when you're building a Midnight Suns roster and whether you can leverage those strengths to win games.
Yeah, I've played them across all your different secure shapes. They are good at all of them, but definitely better at your Gamma style.
I would assume so, yeah.
Because of their immune to incinerate on Voodoo and Voodoo's ability to deny someone from capping anything. They're definitely better at those, really narrow C and E shapes.
I could see Clea getting slipped into Midnight Suns as well to be a delivery platform for Blade and on 19 threat demons.
Yep, I literally put her straight into my roster this morning to test out. The only other thing I'm waiting to see is if the new Doctor Strange is affiliated. Whoa. Ooh. You still got me?
Sorry. I got you. You're good.
I literally hadn't moved my mouse in so long. My screens just went black, and I was like, "Oh God, did I just lose power?"
No, we're good. We're good.
We're good. We're back, baby.
We're back.
So I'm waiting to see if the new Doctor Strange is affiliated with Midnight Suns, because the other Doctor Strange is. So I don't see any reason why he's not, because that enables a really powerful plays, right? Because he is 5 threat. And can do turn 1 extract plays, whereas the other Strange to do that requires advanced R&D or a Soul Stone. So that's a big plus. He also enables the range 3 teleport to get Blade in, and it's from quite a long distance away as well. So you can have him raining down bombs from range while sending Blade up the field on the other side of the field, or even up a D or up on E or a C shape, because Blade is the skill gap for Midnight Suns currently. You can have games with him where you make a positioning mistake and he essentially is a 4 threat just getting you victory points per turn, which is good, but he doesn't do anything. And there is games where he is, the angel of death and kills everything in front of him, right? So he is the skill gap.
So, I see no reason why Midnight Suns can't dethrone Wakanda as, a top 3 affiliation at some point, given how good their cards are as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that Siege of Darkness, their Wakanda Forever, is
so good.
It is so strong, and the Bats the Ghost Hound, they are 2 very, very powerful cards. And I've been finding that the more I play Midnight Suns, you basically go 4 affiliated. Doesn't matter how many numbers you're playing, you are going to bring 4 affiliated characters and build off that, which is really nice to see. I love that as well. You stay in the team. Next up, we have our Criminal Syndicate. So you have ranked him as number 2, and I agree with you on that. If I didn't have Dark Dimension as number 1, Criminal Syndicate would have been my number 2. Number 5 for Morgs, which is interesting that he's rated them low because he speaks extremely high of them 9 times out of 10. Number 3 for Travis and number 3 for me, so they come in an average of 3. Their leadership is just honestly amazing. Like, it is so powerful. They got really, really like powerful characters sitting in Affiliation. They're all according to plan. Just Take Priority is an unbelievable card. I mean, what else they got going for them? They can pass extracts.
I think that Kingpin is one of... We talk about sometimes strong leaderships and strong carriers of leaderships, right? Like, we think that Asgard has a great leadership, but Thor is a little below the curve on that. Black Bolt, great leadership, below curve character. I think Kingpin is just as good as the Criminal Syndicate leadership as a 4-threat character. Arguably one of the best 4-threat characters in the entire game. Just impossible to take down, so strong, and it's on the back of that combined with really, really strong tactics cards and in-affiliate characters that I think this is the affiliation that I think if you play perfectly, no one can beat you.
I agree with you on that. Absolutely. Kingpin is essentially like Fort Knox. You're not going to get that leadership away from him. He makes the rest of his characters just that simple fact that they all count as two healthy characters.
Yeah. It
means that literally every character that hits the board on their team is a massive threat. And you have to deal with all of them as long as Kingpin's alive. He's got an awesome kit behind him. The rest of his team, with Crossbones, and you can bring in Sin, so you can bring in an inaffiliated husband-wife combo, which is unbelievable. They've got so many things happening for him.
Yeah, MODOK. Like, come on, man.
That's it.
Like,
you
it's
got
so good.
You got MODOK in affiliation. That's unbelievable. So next up, we got number 2, and I'm actually shocked to see him this high. But I also understand why they're sitting this high is Wakanda. So you've rated them as number 3, Morg's number 2. I'm shocked to see Morg's rank them still that high, but I guess if Midnight Suns and Convocation don't exist, they basically sit in number 1 anyway while they're not on the table. So I can see that. Travis has definitely rated them as number 2, and I've rated them as number 5, but still top tier. Like, they're still unbelievable, right? Like I said,
they're incredible.
If you go to a tournament and you don't see a Midnight Sun player, there's a very good chance you're going to win that tournament, right?
You mean a Wakanda player, right? Like,
that's what I mean.
So if you're playing Wakanda.
If you're playing Wakanda and you don't see the Midnight Suns and the Convocation on the other side of the table, there's a decent chance that you're in the hot seat to bring this home.
Yeah, and I do think Midnight Suns and Convocation are kind of the check on Wakanda just a bit. Especially Voodoo being like, all right, Panther, like, you don't get to do anything.
Yeah, you're
like,
done.
Whatever.
And like Mystic attacks just in case you think you're not done.
Exactly. There is a lot it's why I have them 3rd, because I think they've been chipped. There's enough balance-wise now, especially with the rules clarification, that they are no longer just bar none miles ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
I think they're incredible still. You can't go wrong with that 9-threat core. Just really, really, really strong. But at the end of the day, they are they have things that they have to be concerned about, which is good.
It's good. It's very good. I wish I could have put them as like equal 4th, because I feel like Black Order has some other things going for them. Criminal Syndicate have all these things going for them. Dark Dimension has all these things going for them, and all 3 of them have the ability to check Wakanda.
Yeah.
But then Midnight Suns is like just the ultimate like equaling thing for the rest of all the other affiliations when it comes to Wakanda. So I wish I could have just put them both as equal 4th.
I'm really excited am excited to see Wakanda Midnight Sun games throw down, because like Panther doesn't love to see Blade, across the table from him. But I don't think Blade wants Panther to be shredding him to bits either, if we're being honest.
No, definitely not. And Wakanda has a lot stronger, a lot stronger control pieces. Yes. And the Wakanda leadership actually is one of the best leaderships in the game to go against Midnight Suns, because it enables them to have rerolls on their Mystic. So that'd actually be a really, really great game to watch, because you got the Wakanda pushes, you got the Midnight Sun bump, which puts them back in place. So it's all these counter techs going against each other, which actually makes them a really great game to watch. So that's going to be great to see that happen.
I'd love to see either you play Wakanda into Midnight Suns, Travis play Midnight Suns, or vice versa. I'd really, or like both of you play the same roster, then flip flop, because I think if you streamed some of that, I think people would be really interested in watching.
Yeah, Travis and I are actually organising a game right now where we're doing the Wakanda Wave versus Midnight Suns at 15.
Yes,
just
love
because
to watch that.
Because we have a 15 threat Midnight Suns squad that we think has serious game against the Wakanda Wave, but Wakanda Wave is Wakanda Wave, right? It's just timeless. It's going to always be good. So we're going to stream that. We'll put it up. We'll put it up everywhere. So we are now at our number one slot. So we got Black Order. You've rated them as first. Morgan's rated them as first. Travis rated them as first. I rated them as second, but that's only because I rated Dark Dimension above them. But Dark Dimension doesn't exist. They are absolutely first in my book. Do you want to go over why Black Order is so good?
Yeah, I mean, it's off the backs of Affiliated, Reality, Corvus, and Proxima's 1-2 punch, and it's hard to understate just how good and powerful that is, in that they just, they knock out a person, you retain priority, then you KO them, or you daze, then KO, boom, boom, like boom, 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 boom. And Corvus has the offensive firepower to eliminate almost any character in the game with 2 attacks. But despite those 2 being really incredible core pieces, Thanos finally got figured out with time and mind, and he is one of the best control pieces in the whole game. So hard to take down, being able to move 2 characters a turn or 3, and it just or more, or more power dependent, right? He really just is something you have to account for, and people may not rank the Black Order leadership that high, but getting victory points, it's the only affiliation in the game that's how you win games. And so Corvus KOing your fodder, that's why I think Black Order does really have game into Dark Dimension, because if they don't take out Thanos, they can take that fodder that Dark Dimension is bringing onto the table and just say, all right, I'm going to KO and get victory points against
That's
you.
right.
Yeah.
The other thing is 2 things to Black Order for me.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Then if you bring them back, I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. You just give me another victory point. It's going to take me 2 turns to get it, but I'm still going to get it. So 2 things for Black Order for me, right? So the ability in this game to pass. If you couldn't do that, I actually think they wouldn't be number 1, because you do your massive Corvus Proxima activation, and then Thanos is tanky enough that you can just continually pass until he is your last activation, right? And they've still got 1 left after him, and then he can just control their entire team out of position, off points and everything, right? So I think if pass didn't exist, Black Order potentially would have a lot more trouble. And if husband and wife didn't exist as well, I think Black Order would also still be up in top 5, but would not be number 1.
I want to give a light shout out. This is a very light shout out. I think that despite Black Order being number 1 in my mind, not enough Black Order players have experimented with Black Dwarf and Ebony Moore. I know Ebony Moore is like this huge meme, but at 14-point sword, I actually think taking Maw Corvus Proxima is better than taking Corvus Proxima Splash is better than taking Thanos. Like, they have more options than people realize. And just because we don't see top players or top people deciding to take Black Dwarf or Ebony Maw on the table, as the meta continues to evolve and shift and grow, I legitimately think that Black Order has options to grow as the game grows that haven't been experimented with yet.
Absolutely. I think that Ebony Moore is a 5 threat that is a prime candidate to have a Mordo stable next to him, because he actually has decent attacks. He just doesn't have much else going for him. But if he has the attacks, like I believe some of his attacks don't even let you generate power off him. Like, they're really, really brutal attacks. It's just the problem is when he was released, MODOK was just all the hotness, heaps of focus on him. And, like X-Force and Inhumans being released together, I think it really just ruined their release for them. So, I think Ebony Moore is definitely worth revisiting with some of the newer characters that are being released right now. He is absolutely worth a revisit.
His Herald of Doom attack is so good. 4 costs for range 4, 8 power. And the character doesn't gain power if you deal damage to them on this.
Yep, that's what I was talking about Mordo with. Make it 10 dice.
Yeah, he he's got one of the best throws in the whole game too. His telekinetic powerhouse. I don't want to. We got to Black Order, and people listening might be like, "Why are you talking about Ebony Moore? Like, obviously, it's not why they're number one." No, it's not why they're number one. But take a look at his card. You look at all the other 5 threats that have been released in the game now, all of them. Ebony Moore, like when you compare it to MODOK, sure, he seems like a meme. But you start looking at all these other 5 threats, these 5 threat Mystic users, and with his 6 native Mystic defense, he suddenly with 7 health does not feel as much as a meme anymore.
No, and 7 health is actually legit. Like that's a lot. Like 7 health for me is a character that might get dazed. That's how I view 7 health nowadays. He might get dazed. He might spend the whole game on his healthy side. So that's something to think about as well. But yeah, totally. I feel like there's a lot of characters with some of the release of this new stuff like Clea, Mordo, even Hood as a cheap healer. That should be revisited, and I will personally be revisiting them. So expect to see them in my up and coming streams. But that's it, mate. That's our Strike Better affiliation list. Thanks for jumping on with me, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd love chatting with you, dude. This is excellent. If you disagreed, where can they get a hold of you?
So you got a couple options. You got me on the Strike Better page. You just tag me as my Von page or as my name, Jaron, and it'll come straight up. You can absolutely send me a message. I'm on Discord as Von in all the Marvel Discords, and you've got my Von Gaming page on Facebook and this YouTube. So feel free to drop a comment. I 9 times out of 10 reply to every single comment. If you have any questions or you disagree with us, absolutely put it in there and say, nah, guys, this is what I think. Feel free to put your rankings below. Take this template, write them all down. Tell me what your guys' rankings are, what you think is the best. So it'll be interesting to see where everyone else puts the rest of the affiliations compared to what we've got. But that's it for us, guys. Thanks very much for watching.
Thank you.